And we are live. What's going on, everybody? Let's talk AWOK. How's it going, Brick?
Oh.
What's going on?
Now that I was figuring, like, what's my AWOK thing? Or ooh, ooh. I don't know. What's up, folks? Let's talk AWOK. Let's be awk. Let's do all the things. Let's rock.
And there's a bunch of people in the chat already. We are a couple minutes late, but that's on me, both of us. I didn't do something that I probably have done a million times. And anyways, let's take a look at the chat before we get going, because like I said, they're already sort of ready to go. Sean Colleran is here. Brian Carr, Gady's Toys, Quip says Europe. Scott Baker, now the now famous Quip, oftentimes co-host of Geek Dad Life. Scott Baker is here. Sath is here as well.
I gotta say to that, you're welcome. Okay, keep going.
Red 5 is here. Gabrielle is here as well. Thanos Copter, Christopher Bouchard, Jeffrey, which is a name that I don't know. I think I've seen that name before because I've seen that avatar before. Patex Alonso is here. JMax77, Endless Fables, and so on and so forth. And Patex says, Salutations de Paris. It's 11 p.m. here, so it's a late night show in Paris, which is why I schedule it at this time, because I feel like I appeal to a European audience. No, it's just random. But anyways.
Would you sponsor us to move there, please? Sorry. Anyways, keep going.
Yeah. All right. So first off, let's get the news out of the way. There isn't any. Effectively, there's no new updates from the factory. There's no new updates in terms of designs or samples or anything like that. We're kind of in the period where we're finalizing the test shots, finalizing the plastic, finalizing the paint, finalizing everything. But that's just a lot of conversations back and forth, and it's not a lot of tangible, observable updates, right? So it may seem as though nothing's happening because there isn't anything dramatic, but this is how exciting and glamorous toy making is. There's a whole lot of just factory stuff, doing molds and getting all that kind of stuff done. So
it's helpful for folks to remember, first off, Gung Hai Fa Choi. We just finished Lunar New Year proper.
Yes.
So folks have gotten back to work. There's been basically a pause on that end of things. And of course, folks are still working on stuff, but there's plenty of stuff to be worked on, as folks, if you've been paying attention to what Spiro's been doing, they've got a lot of things going on. So, but that's also been a pause on the Kickstarter updates. I'm hoping to go back to it because we actually have something to kind of announce, but not less about the progress on the Kickstarter, but more about the growing fandom, which we'll talk about today too. So
yeah, which is kind of crazy because we'll come around to this sort of at the end probably, but the fact that Brick and I kind of connected as a result of there being sort of no Animal Warriors of the Kingdom content out there, we have some good news about more Animal Warriors of the Kingdom content. So
one by one, keep adding them.
Do we have a previously in AWOK section? I don't know.
Like previously on AWOK.
I wish we had like a recap where it was like, what's crazy though? I was thinking about this. This is episode 25 of this. We've done this 25 times, and that doesn't include videos that we might not have called Monkey Business. There's AWOK talk videos over on your channel as well, and then all the streams that we've done. Like, we've done a lot of videos. And still, there are people out there that haven't jumped on the brand, jumped on the line, jumped on whatever. So it's cool, like I said, that there's sort of more stuff going on, and it's cool that con season's coming up. So again, we can sort of get more exposure from people that might not have Facebook, might not have Instagram, might not be sort of tuned into the same channels and stations and things that we are. So it's cool. I mean, Animal Warriors of the Kingdom and Spiro continues to grow. So it's all good stuff.
I'm smiling because he said, might not be sick like all of us here right now on this live stream now, but we love this stuff. We're plugged in, we're watching ToyTube, we're doing it, but like, it's true. The vast majority of toy folks aren't. And then beyond that, they're just not paying attention to this stuff, which is why, this stuff is important, but the idea of other people doing shows or people doing photo collabs or creating customs and sharing them on Instagram, or just like talking to your toy collector friends who don't explore indie toys, period, about this awesome toy line. Like it's super important. So
absolutely. That's yeah. So Endless Fable says, when are you all going to do the rest of AWOK talk? We have what, 2 or 3 in the can still?
Just sort of. We have to finish we have to finish editing the interview with Utama, which is actually really dope. It's just that the challenge is, and it's partially my fault in that, like, I'm a visual person. So as much as I love the sound of your voice, Adam, and we know that Utama has a beautiful voice as well, but when he's talking about like all this art and this is what I did, and it's like, I gotta find those photos and work them in to make it, I think, visually coherent. Yeah. And then after that, we have, I think, issue 3 done. I don't think we ever talked about issue 4. And no, we kind of 5 is out. We got to circle back to that.
There's a reason to get back on it. Yeah, absolutely. I think we paused before issue 4 because we didn't want to kind of go into issue 5, which is the end of the story arc, almost cold. So we kind of just put the brakes on. But now that issue 5 is out, I mean, that's the big news, I think, since the last time we did Monkey Business, is that issue 5 is out.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about the comics real quick too. It's not so much news, but it's occurred to me based on some questions I just fielded today that there's still quite a bit of confusion around sort of what happened with the comics and how people can get it now. Yeah. So I mean, I'm happy to chime in. I know I'm throwing you a curveball, but
no, not at all. It's I'll pull this up here because I was going to pull this up here anyway, and sort of show this, that the digital comics are back up on spirotoys.com. So if you want to read the lore for yourself and you want to get into the comic books, all of the issues that have been released so far are available. I think they're like $2 an issue on the website, which is a phenomenal price, for a comic book. Now, physical copies is a little bit more complicated, and really the reality of the physical comic books is that Jason is having them published himself, and then he sort of sold and packed and mailed issues 1 through 4 himself. So if you were a Kickstarter backer, you could have gotten issues 1 through 4 as part of your order. And if you weren't, you could still order them off the site for a brief time, but they sold out. I mean, the first batch of physical copies sold clean out. There were none left. People were sort of asking for more. And so
I hope Jason still has mine, because I haven't gotten them yet. He set some aside.
I think he does, and I have to confirm this with him, but I believe we're going to have comic books at WonderCon.
Yes. So just on that, what Adam just described, please recognize this was like in the olden days. This is in Kickstarter Primal Series 1, that first Kickstarter for these bigger figures. And that was sort of an additional thing that you could buy. So these were totally self-published. They were nice quality paper. They were totally indie, artisanal, locally grown, handcrafted Animal Warriors of the Kingdom comics with the original covers 1 through 4. They didn't finish 5 at that time. So these things have been sitting around for a long while, and they were available digitally as well to folks. So which is why this guy and I started the AWOK talk thing, going issue by issue, talking about the comics, and then there was this sort of pause on like, hey, what do we actually want to do? This is now Spiro speaking. What do we actually want to do? How do we get these comics in people's hands? Because we self-published and got these out there, a relatively small run, right? And so they looked at working with other publishers. Like there was a time period where they actually went around and tried to meet with different folks about potentially republishing issues 1 through 4 and then finishing off the arc. And then ultimately, in conversation with, I love it, in 2025, Diamond, who's been in the news recently, who was already carrying Animal Warriors of the Kingdom action figures. they basically decided, you know what, let's still continue to self-publish, but do it in more of the sort of in the format, paper quality, all that kind of stuff that you would get from your standard comic books at a comic book shop. Release them with new covers and exclusive covers and do it monthly. And they've been doing that starting in 2024. That's been coming out at stores. They just released issue number 5 in stores. So the reason I want to bring it up is in a conversation today, people are like, yeah, there are retailers who are upset that they weren't able to carry the comic. And I was like, I don't totally know what that means, because they were saying they carry the toys, but I just don't think people understood like where the comic was at in terms of like going now through mainstream distribution, and that you could get it at a comic book shop. So I think there were toy retailers out there who were like, it sounded like maybe a little bit like, oh man, how come we didn't get the opportunity to, not realizing that they could have ordered through Diamond.
I mean, I think probably most toy retailers have a Diamond account, because if you're sort of a small toy retailer, a lot of small toy retailers can't afford to pay, like the minimum order quantities from some of the bigger brands, and so a lot of them will go through Diamond. I don't know what that shop was. I don't know. But effectively in the last year and a bit, there haven't been any comic books. So if that retailer kind of picked up the line and was buying them from Spiro direct, we wouldn't have had any comics to give them anyway. Right. So it's kind of a moot point, right? Where depending on when they got in, if they got in on day one, and they didn't ask for the comics, then I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the account is. I don't know what store it is. I don't know what they asked for in the first place. Right. I don't think there was ever I don't think there was ever an attempt to like withhold the comic books from anybody.
Yeah, exactly.
We didn't have them for very long.
And it's like we're in the business, in the quote unquote business of toy collecting and talking about toy collecting. Anecdotal stories about outrage and frustration. You know what's behind that often. So like just trying to clear the air for folks that they were available through Diamond. If you miss it, we understand. Like this is the reality of things. The Diamond. Folks have known that Diamond's in the process of restructuring, so that's still a question, but it's a little bit moot in that the entire arc 1 through 5 was released.
Yes.
So the plans is, if you've been watching these shows, is that what comes next is they're in the process of finishing up issue 6, but the goal was to release the first story arc 1 through 5 as a trade paperback, and then look at some one shots in between before the sort of story proper continues. But
I think that trade paperback is probably gonna be a really good opportunity for a lot of people. We basically printed all the copies of the issues and sent them all to Diamond. Apart from, a few that we kept behind for conventions and things like that, to the best of my knowledge. They don't travel well though either. So like when we pack up for conventions and stuff like that, you're always running the risk of some of those comics getting a little bit damaged, which is why we typically haven't had them at conventions. That being said, it's awesome that there's the demand for it. And if there's enough demand for it, who knows? Maybe in a year, 2 years, 3 years, these all get reprinted. Like I guess they'll technically be third printing. Maybe the alternate covers will get a recolor, and then they become the sort of third print run cover A. I don't know, but it's cool that people want these and can't get them. It's kind of like, it's not cool that people want these and can't get them. It's cool that people want them. And the fact that they can't get them almost makes people want them more, right? And so hopefully the trade paperback will kind of allow them to get the lore and allow them to sort of get the sort of story that they want, even if you can't secure the physical copies of the first printing. But Ray Pass says, will Jason make it a hardcover? I doubt it. Hardcovers are considerably more expensive to produce, and then they take up, you know, more space, and they're heavier, so they're more expensive to ship, and so on and so forth. So for the time being, I don't think so. You know, if in a few years, you know, the cartoon comes out and there's a huge demand for it, maybe there will be the first 4 story arcs in an omnibus hardcover edition. But that's you know, that's pipe dreams at this point. So hopefully, I mean, I guess hopefully at some point, you know, all versions will be available and everybody will sort of have access to everything that they need and want. But
So can I just a couple of things to sum up? You can get the story now if you really want it. It's
yes,
digital. Head over to spirotoys.com and you can see that link. There are a couple questions. One that I starred because you kind of mentioned bringing some to cons.
yeah, and I don't know 100%. So Jason has mentioned to Brick and myself that for WonderCon, which we are doing at the end of March in Anaheim, California, he said that he would have comic books in there. Whether he's remembered to do that and set some aside remains to be seen. We will see. I can try to confirm that with him in the next little bit and maybe try to post something somewhere. Because it's probably not a bad idea to sort of, before we go to the con, you know, put out there, hey, if you're going to be at ZoloCon, you know, we're going to have comics or something. So stay tuned. Maybe stay tuned to the Spiro Toys Instagram, Spiro Toys Facebook, because hopefully, you know, we can get that information shared there. Because the answer is, I'm not 100% certain.
Well, you did mention, sorry, just one. So the goal was, the reason you mentioned that to us, as you kind of quickly mentioned, was that because you and I are going to be at WonderCon at a Spiro table selling toys, and WonderCon is basically, it's run by the same folks that do San Diego Comic-Con, but up right by Disneyland, which is not that far from San Diego. So it just seemed like it made sense to bring comics to that one. So that's what Jason said. We'll get you some comics. Again, we'll see.
We'll see
if that happens. We still got a month away. They can send it to us, I'm hoping.
Yeah.
But if you're around WonderCon in California, Southern California, come through. Maybe you might want to go to Disneyland because it's super cheap and easily accessible, right, Adam?
Yeah, jeez. It's shocking as a Canadian, the price with the exchange rate. Anyways, Solo Center asks, when is the trade paperback coming out? There is no set date, but now with issue 5 done, it's really just a matter of getting it formatted, getting it printed, adding a couple little sort of extra tidbits, if we can. But yeah, that's sort of.
I didn't mean for that to play.
Oh, you want me to pull it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. I was trying to upload it for us to share later in response to some of the things around comic books, but
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. As far as the date on the trade paperback, I don't know, to be perfectly honest. That's sort of Jason doing that from home base. And as soon as I know, we will definitely let everybody else know. The plan or the goal is to, like I said, have a few extra pages in there. There were sort of a few things discussed of, like, you know, what more could we kind of put in there? Maybe having the alternate covers sort of put in there. Maybe having a couple other sort of things that are just lore related put in there too. So, yeah, stay tuned for more on that. But at the moment, we don't have that answer either. So, Rob said, "Do you guys need help at WonderCon?" I don't know, but we'll certainly sort of keep you in mind for that if we do. We're still kind of finalizing some of the details. Cons in California work differently than anywhere else, and you have to get like paperwork, formal paperwork from the state of California to sell things at a con, which is the only con where you have to do anything like that. So we're actually still waiting for them to approve our permit to sell. So stay tuned. It might be
it's a much bigger operation. Some of the smaller cons, that's not normal. That's not something you do. But for it's a massive corporation behind the Wonder
I think for them
Continent
it's just a
TCC, so
liability thing. It's just yeah,
yep.
and it was pretty wild. Like I was filling out the questionnaire and it's like, will you be selling prepaid phone plans? Will you be selling firearms? Will you be selling car tires? And we are like, what is these are the most random questions.
The question was firearms, plural.
So
Prepaid cell
one is
phones,
maybe
plural.
okay.
No, we're just selling one. So
Yeah.
it'll
So
be fine.
I'm answering honestly. Red 5. So does this mean we're going to have a shortage on lore building? Is that if what about doing one-page stories like Monster Force? I mean, I don't. That's a better question for Jason. I don't know. I mean, they're still working on the comic. It's just with so much other stuff going on. It's just not. It's not like they're banging one out every month, right? Like you gotta remember that. Again, we have to stress this every time. Spiro Enterprise LLC is effectively Jason, and then as far as employees, it's like me and Derek, and then Brick helps out, but he's not a paid employee, so it's sort of
contrary to public.
There's only so much time in the day, so the priority is getting the figures out. Jason's still working on the book. Utama's doing the penciling, and I think he kind of does like the basic inking, and then Jason does the coloring, and then there's a guy that does the letter work, and then it's ready to go. But it's one of those things. The lore is coming.
I have a thought on
We've
it.
seen pages, like Brick and I have seen pages, and they're gonna be rad. It's just, I wish it was faster.
Yeah, the reason I wanted to chime in, and we just had this conversation last night. We hang out over on Ostradamus Toys on Clubhouse, and Ken and Steve from D7 Delta 17 were on, and they're talking about their comic book, and Steve was talking about like the amount of work that goes into it, and I don't know. I pointed out two things. One, of course, there's a lot of work. Like if you think back to the heyday, a lot of people think like the 80s were so great and all those comic books like G.I. Joe and Transformers. Well, they were developed by a company called Marvel Comics that literally was hired to work with these toy companies who were like, we make toys. You make comics. You have the infrastructure and the stable of artists and writers to make something great, which is what they did. So if you look at, contrary to what this guy thinks, the ROM comics and the Micronauts comics and the G.I. Joe, and like they had people who wanted to tell those stories and draw those stories separately from the people who were working on the toys. Yeah. Really, if you follow the history of Spiro, like this started as an idea for a graphic novel in Jason's head. So it started as lore first. So he had this idea for a world and this story that he wanted to tell. He did it first with the first set of action figures, stepped back, worked with Utama to develop the world differently and, create this Primal series thing that would then also work with these awesome 112 figures-ish. And so, but like, that's crazy. Like I grew up reading comics and I loved it. I grew up in that era. Remember when everyone was like creator-owned titles and it was like this awesome thing where like, yes, McFarlane can make comics now and Jim Lee can make comics, and we all went to the shop, and issue 1 took a while to come out, and then we waited a couple months before issue 2, and then a couple more months before issue 3, and then the lines got canceled. Like that's the reality of comic book production. Imagine trying to do that while making toy. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that it depends. Like if you read those comics, the Animal Warriors of the Kingdom comics, they're amazing. Like I think they're really solid storytelling, a great story, and that's why this guy and I like geek out for hours, and then I somehow try to edit it into like 40 minutes.
40 minutes, yeah.
But it's like they're really great stories. It strikes the imagination, but then it becomes this thing of like, should Spiro kind of keep trying to get a little bit of lore out there, or do they spend, it's like, how do they do this with quality? So, but the other thing is, and I'll say I can understand the impatience from a lot of us who've been around, but as we kind of established earlier, there just aren't enough people who know about Animal Warriors of the Kingdom yet. So for a lot of people, the vast majority of folks out there, this is just brand new stuff. So there is going to be a little bit of like introducing them to issue 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 that we need to do. And so on that note, so we'll see how things develop, but I did bring up that video for a reason, in response to Brian Carr's comment there. So he seems to agree that the comics are a really great read and are crucial to knowing the story of AWOK, and number one has a real curveball. And I know some of you have seen this, but I would really love to share it because I think it is the at the core of the story.
Yeah, it's kind of the essence. It's the essence of what Animal Warriors of the Kingdom is. And for a lot of people, when they see it, their perception of what this line is, if it's not completely blown out of the water, it's at least, changed. So yeah, let's take a look. It's a couple minutes, right? Let's do it.
It's quicker than that. It's
I think we could talk
really
over
like
a
2-page spread, I think, in issue number 1. And then I'll leave it with a tease that it definitely has some impact, not just on this arc, but future arcs. Is audio playing? Yeah. Yeah. Get your toys out, folks. Play along to the cartoon. Yeah.
This was all cut by Brick, and he does all the voices.
Way to make it more awkward.
He doesn't do all the voices.
Come closer, boy. It is time you learned about your people. This is not our world, and we didn't always look this way. In fact, our people fled our original world in order to avoid extinction. Our world was dying. We had extracted almost every last bit of life force from her, and in her dying act she sought to take us with her. But we were stubborn and resilient people, and had other plans.
Other plans? But how did we escape?
We were far more advanced in that era than we are today. In fact, we had cities of glass and steel that went on for as far as the eye could see, and giant metal floating ships that travel all along our planet and even to nearby worlds. We used these giant ships that we called arcs to transport our people and the sum of our knowledge to as many planets as we could to find new suitable homes for our people. The arcs had everything we would need to rebuild and make these new worlds our own, including the building block of plant and animal life we called DNA. We thought we had figured it all out. But something strange happened to our arc right before we reached our new home. Our ship began tearing itself apart and sent us crashing down onto the planet's surface. The ship's artificial intelligence had watched us during the journey and had passed judgment on us.
Love this.
It remained in orbit and started altering us. The AI solution to our constant greed and fighting was to infuse us with the building blocks of life forms that lived in harmony with nature and would allow us to protect and nurture this new world. It changed our outward appearance, but not our minds and hearts. Deep down, the greed and anger of humanity still remained. And while most of us welcomed this new chance at life and redemption, there were many who refused. Their bodies began rejecting this transformation and started reverting back into our original human form.
Anyways, you get the idea, and those voices are weird, but there was some computer assistance there too, and some squeezing. But I'll just say that that whole thing is fantastic, especially like in 2025, the conversations around AI, the conversations around potential world-ending events and irresponsibility and how we treat the planet, all of those things worked into this story. And whenever I share that with folks, they're like, wait, they're like humans?
Yeah.
And this is a sci-fi thing? Like that stuff is trippy. So I don't know. I love seeing that. It really is just those 2 pages. I know we are kind of in this moment of an interesting sort of pause on the lore, but hoping that, let's get folks in on the story, because I think there are some things that there are different hooks for different people. For some of us, it's like, wow, cool, animal looking people. For others, sci-fi and AI and future where DNA is altered and all of that stuff. That there's some really great things, which is why I think you and I started doing this, but it's great that more and more people are finding it and wanting to geek out with everybody about it. So
yeah, and you mentioned that people want more lore, and I mean, you and I both want more lore. We also were in from day one, so we're like 2.5 years into wanting more lore effectively. There's people that might have picked this lineup at Legion's Con in November, and so they've gotten all 5 books in the last 3 months, and they're like, I want more. And I'm like, you think it's bad that you got to wait a couple months? Like, imagine waiting a year to get the next issue. Thanos, we empathize with you. But I mean, I want more, but like you said, I mean, it's not, they're not 2 separate things. We have to make everything work. We have to get, the figures out as well. So Jason has to sort of prioritize. But you also held up that beast of the Cenozoic Smilodon. Now, for those that aren't familiar with Creative Beast Studio that makes those, they're doing Cyberzoic as well. And Cyberzoic, it has really, really cool lore as well. And again, I'm chomping at the bit for more lore. I keep asking them for more lore. They did like one Kickstarter update that gave like a whole bunch of lore in just one big dump. And that was, when was the Kickstarter? Like
that was a while back.
February, like a year ago. And we haven't had like anything since. And I'm just like, give me more. They're going to have a comic book, which is supposed to be out, I think around May, so it's like soon enough. But yeah, I mean, same thing. Like, if it's something that you're passionate, you always want more. Now to the point you made a little bit earlier, Brick, like as this continues to grow, as I said, there's not that many employees working for Spiro, and Jason is doing this full time, and that's all he's doing. I have a full-time job, and then I kind of do this part-time in the evenings. In a perfect world, Spiro would sell so many toys that I would be able to spend more of my time doing the stuff that Jason has to do and take it off his plate, but that's just not the economic reality of it either. So although there's a lot of like really diehard Animal Warriors of the Kingdom fans, that fandom still needs to grow. There's still a need for that to expand. There needs to be, more pockets of the sort of YouTube world like us, which we'll touch on. And just more people talking about the toys, more people buying the toys, more eyes on the brand, and so on and so forth, to allow that kind of thing to happen. So, be patient, be sort of optimistic that we're going to get there. It's just, tell your friends about it, get these figures in the hands of other collectors if you can, because that's really how it grows, right? We don't have the financial means to sort of plaster this on billboards all over the place. You're not going to see an ad at the Super Bowl for Animal Warriors of the Kingdom. It's just not in the cards. So, it does come down to, if you want more, tell us you want more, but tell other people why you want more that might not be familiar with this property, and sort of get other people on board and get more people sort of switched on and engaged with this. And that just sort of facilitates more of what you love and what we love. So.
Let me just say one other thing. Like, I'm a big Masters of the Universe guy, and I will tell you, even as a kid, those little mini comics that came with a tiny story of a couple of pages were not satisfying. And that's not what these are. Again, to produce those is different from producing the larger story arc
Yeah,
and the
agreed.
building
Yeah,
stories.
agreed. Fully. Yeah.
And yeah, and so like while like maybe 1 or 2 pages sounds intriguing, like it's also I think I kind of would be even more frustrated
Yeah.
with that because I know of like what they can do and the kind of story they want to tell. And so like the kind of day in the life, tiny whatever battle of the week comic thing, I don't think would be enough. But just throwing that out there. Stuff takes time. You've already said it. But yeah, let's move forward and celebrate what's there and tell people about it.
Absolutely. And we'll look at a couple more of these chat comments, and then we'll talk about what's to come. Right after I do a quick flip through issue 5, because there is a couple things that people have sort of pointed out, and we won't like read it, and I won't let you sort of linger on it too long. But there's specifically one little character in there that I think a lot of people were like, "Oh, that guy's awesome." But anyway, first and foremost, Solo Sinner, thank you. You are too kind. $25 super chat. He says, "Hey guys, is there a stream where you guys will get Jason on to dive deeper into the lore? Field questions like an AMA. I have questions." Also,
go
ahead.
Here's my answer. The answer is Solo Sinner comes and is in here and has super chatted so many times. The answer is, of course there is, and I'll make it happen as soon as possible. It's a great idea. Why don't we just do it? I'll figure out a schedule and we'll try and do it in the next 2 weeks. That'd be fun because he hasn't done that live where he's just like, hey, let's just talk about the comic story. Sure, I'd love to focus it more on like, what are some thoughts of his thoughts on where the story came from, like, where these characters go and that kind of stuff. That'd be awesome. So,
and I think now that the first story arc is done, it's easier to kind of look at that, and discuss things inside that story arc without being like, okay, I always kind of find it frustrating when people are like, well, tell me what happens next. It's like, don't you want to like wait and see what happens next? Like, isn't that kind of the point of the comic, is to like see the visuals and sort of see how it plays out? I know that I want to know, and I know that I do know, but it's like, I still have questions about what happens in issues 1 through 5. There's still frames where I'm like, okay, so what is this, or did I miss something, or is there no more to this? Is there a layer that, and you and I, when we've done AWOK talk, Jason's like, I wondered if somebody would catch that. Like, we caught some of the weird little things. By the time we were at sort of issue 3, we were like, I think in issue 1, this is what was happening, and we didn't quite realize it at the time. And now we have, the hindsight to kind of know and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, the lore is so good and it is so thick, and knowing sort of what's coming next, it's I mean, it's just gonna get crazier. So I'm very, very excited for what
this is an example of the story where I was like, wait, what's Tiberius? And
Tiberius is a kid in the first story arc, but he's a figure in the series because they didn't have a kid-sized box. So
that, and then the question of the recent Kickstarter of, is it Brutox? Is it Oxidus? Those are good questions, but we could sit Jason down and ask him, because there are story elements there related. So thank you, Solo Sinner, because obviously you've been super supportive, and ask by super chat and you shall receive. So we'll let you know. Look out for it. I'm going to see if we can make it happen the next 2 weeks.
Brian Endless Fables asks, when is Brick Something doing the complete motion comic? When he has about 6 months off with nothing else to do, I think is probably
that's
the
2
answer.
summers, which never really happens. But no, I wanted to do that. I wanted to do like the Kingdom Chronicles of like key moments. So I did the first one as kind of proof of concept, with the hopes that I would find other folks who'd be like, oh, like, let me help, I'll do that. Haven't found those yet, but we'll get there.
Christopher Bouchard says, just bought all 5 digital Spiro comics. Can't wait for the Zombies from Mars Kickstarter. next weekend, man. It's crazy. Wesley K, AWOK and Cyberzoic is really interesting, but it's still just a starting point for my imagination. Can't wait for more from both, though. And that's absolutely it, too. It's like, write some fan fiction. Like, we haven't seen that yet, and I would love to see that. I would love to see somebody do a comic book and, like, submit it. Like, you know, I'm not trying to, don't send us unsolicited information, but if you do a comic book, reach out to us and sort of, you know, maybe we could have that discussion. Maybe we need a guest author. Maybe we need a guest artist. Like, there's always room for that, you know, time permitting and stuff like that. So, Nolan is here. Good to have you, Nolan. It's been a while, I think, since you've been in the chat. But anyway, Red 5 says the Tiberius D age was interesting. I think what that came down to was really that Jason wanted to get Tiberius in there in the lore so that people knew who Tiberius was. I think there's almost like a lack of bio with the actual figures themselves, so you don't really get and there's inconsistencies in the bios. So consider the comic book to be sort of the lore Bible, if you will. But do what you want. They're your toys. Once they're in your hands, you can do whatever you want with them. All right. So, as I said, I do very quickly want to do this and skip ahead just a little bit and don't read the
text.
Yeah,
oh,
don't
shoot,
read.
If we prepped, I still have the ones that don't have text, but
it's all good. I'm gonna look at them for like literally like 2 minutes kind of thing. Where is it? I gotta find it because I don't usually use this. So this is issue 5 of the comic book. I just wanted to bring to attention this little guy. The Maker is introduced in issue 5, and we get this little beaver character. He's a little engineer. And everybody that sort of got issue 5, look at his little face here. Everybody that got issue 5 was like, no one wanted to spoil anything. They're like, there's a character in there that I really hope we get seen in a you know, an action figure form. And I will say this, if we had that buck, it would already be sort of out there. But we don't. That being said, and we've said this before, you know, if characters appear in the lore, they're much more likely to appear in figure form. So, you know, it's not going to happen in the next couple of months, but just know that small guys will eventually be in the line, you know, just to have the small guys are just as important as the big guys.
They are. Just keep in mind that the reaction to Snarf at Super 7 scared a lot of people.
Yeah, that's true. That is absolutely true. The small guy would be the same price as a regular size figure. It wouldn't be, the amount of plastic notwithstanding, they cost about the same amount of money to make. So, and yeah, Patex Alonso says, need a figure of the beaver. And Quip says, an anthropomorphic beaver engineer. Sign me up. Absolutely. Lots of good stuff.
I wish we had more time with him in that issue because he just gets introduced right at the end as things conclude. So, so we'll see where it goes and you know what's up. But I want to see more beavers. I want to see other animals too, other little ones.
Yeah, and I mean we've kind of gone through that, right? Like the amount of species, and you know what the nice thing is, most of the people that sort of watch us have gotten to the point where they're not asking about a species every time we do a video. Like, when are you going to do this? Which is great because we're going to try to do everything. It's just, you know, it all takes time. So, but the reality is, you know, we've got a whole bunch of new bucks to make, including this brawler buck. And so it'll be a minute before we get there. Just wanted to bring this up because Brian Carr was generous enough to send us a $5 super chat. It says, Rob, Mark, Thomas, myself, and a few others are starting an AWOK show soon on Mark's Saturday morning toy collector channel. Excited to spread the word. Absolutely. And we will be getting to that. We will sort of mention to people what that is before we wrap up. So
that's what we were referring to in the beginning, but thank you for the super chat. But we definitely are going to spend lots of time highlighting that here and on this Wednesday's Kickstarter update for sure. Excited.
Quip says, I'm waiting patiently for that cassowary. Aren't
brought that
we
up. I think it
all?
was we brought that up in I don't think it's been released. It's one of the issues that we hadn't released, and that was one of my pulls, was a big giant colorful bird that basically looks like Felonious here color wise.
Yeah. Yeah, so what's coming up? Convention season is right around the corner. Spiro Toys is going to be at ZoloCon next weekend, is sort of the first con of the season for them. I think. And then, from there, there's a whole bunch planned. Stay tuned for more news. They're going to be at Toylanta. We are going to be at WonderCon at the same time. There's Joe Fest, there's Joe Lanta, there's Legions Con, there's more than that. But that's kind of a rundown of the ones that I know, because those are the ones that I'm probably more likely to be at. All the ones that I'm not going to be at, I forget about, but they're going to do lots. Now, just for the sake of clarity, this Felonious figure is a Joe Lanta exclusive, so please don't show up at Toylanta and demand your Felonious, because he won't be there. He will not be there. That was a bit of a miscommunication. The figure was released and sort of introduced as a Joe Lanta exclusive. Unfortunately, it was placed next to a little card that said Toylanta will be March 28th, 29th, and 30th. So people kind of put two and two together and just sort of assumed that the card was referring to where they could get this guy, which is just not true, unfortunately. But very, very excited to get this guy. Toylanta is the same, convention group as Joe Lanta. Brett's an awesome dude. He puts on those two shows. But yeah, Spiro is going to be at ZoloCon and then Toylanta. And if you're going to be sort of in that area, by all means, get by there and check things out. Pick up some toys. Maybe there's going to be posters. Maybe there's going to be other stuff. Jason likes to add little fun surprises so that the table isn't just a bunch of boxes of figures. So, and if you don't need to pick anything up, just stop by and say hello. Same is true at WonderCon. If you're going to be at WonderCon or sort of in the area and we're thinking about going to WonderCon, this is your sign that you should, get a ticket and come visit us. Brick and I are going to be there. I think it's gonna be a fun weekend. It's gonna be kind of weird because it's gonna be the two of us representing Spiro, while Jason and Derek are sort of on the other side of the country representing Spiro at the same time. So,
but I'm excited for a couple of reasons. But I'm excited to be in sort of my neck of the woods in California. I grew up in Southern California, not far from there. But I know based on going down there, talking to people at shops, like they just don't have a sense of what Animal Warriors of the Kingdom is or Spiro. And so I'm glad I know it's going to be like, we're going to be a little tiny needle in a giant haystack of all sorts of other cool, big, nerdy things, but happy to be there to kind of represent the one, I guess a little bit of a bummer is that, normally things like this, the actual prototypes and stuff, they go with Jason. So they're often at cons or shows that Jason's at, like at Legions Con, we had a bunch of the prototypes and test shots of, or whatever, first shots of some of the Kickstarter figures. Like a lot of that will probably still be around in those upcoming shows that Jason will be at. It won't be here on the West Coast. But we will. And I'm also excited for you and your family to check out Southern California for a little bit. I hope you guys have fun there.
Yeah.
So
very, very excited.
Can I also just say, I think it's really funny that this guy, Felonious, who's meant to kind of resemble maybe a Masters of the Universe character, will be showing up at Joe Lanta, while at Toylanta, you can get a somewhat G.I. Joe kind of tribute by the Four Horsemen.
That
was hilarious. Both great toys.
Yeah, and so there are cool toys at both conventions, but they probably could have been represented at the other convention. Yeah, for sure. Sean Collarant said issue 5's ending was solid. I was glad it ended the way I figured it would. Yeah, in a lot of ways it was, you kind of probably could have predicted it in some ways, but yeah, I think it was a good ending. I think the cover for issue 6 is like pretty cool, which is right at the end of issue 5 there. So Patex Alonso says, I was wondering, speaking about brawlers, do you guys have some pictures of the Grimes alternate head with the cigar painted? We only saw a gray 3D rendering. I haven't seen one, actually, now that I think of it.
Yeah, we haven't seen Paint Masters yet. We haven't seen Jason work on those.
I think it's done. I mean, the brawlers are so close to production.
I'm trying to think back, and that might be one of those things where he's like, yeah, I forgot to take pictures. There was a point in this process when I was like working with Jason to figure out the weekly or, you know, whatever regular weekly updates or regular Wednesday updates on the Kickstarter, that it was just like, hey, Jason, you need to like take pictures of everything.
Yeah.
Just put it on a drive, and like I can work on trickling that out to make it, you know, because that stuff's exciting and people want to see that. And his response is like, really? You think people want to see that? Like, it's just because he's so in it that, you know, to him, it's just what he does every day. But to us, we're like, whoa. So he
and largely before we were telling him he needed to do it, no one was telling him he needed to do it. So he just never got in the habit of doing it. And working with Arlen on Space Zombies from Mars, it's kind of been the same thing where it's like, send me as many pictures as you can, and I get, you know, 1 or 2 a week. He's like doing all this work behind the scenes, and I get 1 or 2 pictures. But it's just not part of most creators' process to like stop what they're doing and document it and then sort of start again. So I think that's kind of what happened. I think I genuinely do think I remember hearing Jason say something along the lines of, we did the Paint Masters and I had to mail them off, you know, to hit sort of a deadline. And so there just weren't pictures taken. He was just sort of he just had to get them done and get them in a box and get them shipped. And taking a picture just wasn't sort of in the list of priorities, or in the sort of efficiency of getting them off. So
yeah.
Ray Pad, so the one shots would come before the next issue. Just wanted to make sure I understood. We don't know is the answer. They're working on issue 6, so I think that it's more likely that we'll get issue 6 next.
Well, yeah, but we do know that was initially, he said, what he wanted to do. He wanted to pause in between arcs, or what he's basically called seasons. Like, I want to throw that out there. Like, he's written these arcs as sort of like, wouldn't it be great if this was a season of televised cartoons? And so the idea is we would pause, and then the one shots could maybe fill in some backstories of characters or events that we saw in the first arc, or introduce characters and environments that'll be showing up in the second arc. So I suspect, even though he's working on 6, that's still part of the plan, because, you know, you don't want to, just because 6 is done, you're going to have to develop the rest of them so that you can release them at a regular schedule. So it's not like issue 6 is done, so he's going to release it ASAP. I think there's a needed gap. So we'll see. And I think the goal was see. I mean, he'd play a different role on those one shots, is what he was talking about too.
Yeah. Just and that was you know, we had already sort of thrown around the idea of like, you know, alternate artists or alternate writers or whatever, depending on, you know, the specifics of it. But that's the thing, is that there's no specifics as of yet that I'm aware of. So we're waiting in the same way that you guys are, and you know, we don't get to make those calls, and we don't always know what's going on with everything behind the scenes either, to be perfectly honest. Okay. Endless Fable says, my wife picked up Felonious at Toylanta as me and Derek are telling her to put it down. She really likes that one. She was playing with the Paint Master at Toylanta. That's about all we've got, you know, as far as our news goes, as far as, you know, what's going on with Spiro, what's going on with, you know, the convention schedule and stuff like that. But what we do want to share with you guys is this. So they don't have anything, you know, actually like posted up about it just yet. But if you watch their last episode, which is 36, so if you anyway, if you go here and do this, episode 38, there you go. In episode 38, they announce the Saturday Morning Toy Collector channel will have a new AWOK specific show that I think they said would go every 2 weeks. And they will be talking about, customs and, different figures and like soft goods that people are making and all that kind of stuff. So just lots of like really, really cool stuff going on over there. And again, like we were saying, it's really cool to see that there's more people that are as excited about Animal Wars of the Kingdom as us, to the point where they're doing sort of content dedicated to it. I think, this is great for the brand. And in the same way that I was saying, like tell your friends about the line, tell your friends about this. Like if your friends watch, ToyTube, get them to go check out Saturday Morning Toy Collector and check out their videos and soon their AWOK content. I think they said the first one will go up not this coming weekend because ZoloCon is there and a lot of them are going to be doing that, but the following weekend. So go over to Saturday Morning Toy Collector, subscribe to their channel, get the notifications, and check out more Animal Warriors of the Kingdom YouTube content, because there's not that much. So if we're not going to get lore in the next couple of weeks, at least you're still going to get a little bit of content that you can still kind of enjoy and check out. So
yeah, shout out to Rob, Mark, Brian, who else? I don't know if Schmerber's involved in that.
I don't know that he's involved. I think
Terrence
messaged me about it.
That's right, Terrence.
So they're going to have sort of a rotating cast of hosts and guest hosts, and
I'll just say
very cool.
Shout out to Saturday Morning Toy Collection.
Collector.
Toy Collector. Yeah. Their podcast, Double Jointed, is dope, period. So you should definitely check it out if you're interested in toys. They've been doing, Mark's been doing interviews too. Like there's a great interview that just popped up with D Amazing. He had, who else did he have? He had Dorklair on there. He had Toy Bro on there. So definitely check that out. But this thing is going to be cool. It's going to be focused on the fandom, customizers. I'm hoping maybe toy photographers as well, like folks who are just really love this thing. They're gonna come hang out and just kind of talk about their geekiness of it. And shout out to Rob, who it was a couple of episodes back, it was actually a live stream. They were talking about Legions, but then there was this whole section where they're just like, but I've been playing with these Animal Warriors of the Kingdom and I keep getting more, and I've had this figure on me for the longest time. And I think it just spun out from there, which I think is really great. The show is going to be called The Tribe as well, which is great. Which is perfect.
Yes.
That's Derek Chandler, Nowhere Man, employee number 1, I think, of Spiro Toys, not counting Jason because he's not an employee. That's sort of his brainchild, this notion of gather the tribe. Let's really develop our fan base and get that support. And it seems like it's definitely happening. So shout out to them. Looking forward to it in about 2 weeks. So.
Yeah. And what honestly, what I think is kind of cool about it is that, we just by default and just somewhat accidentally kind of stumbled into, the roles that we now have sort of within sort of Spiro and sort of in relation to Spiro. It'll be cool to sort of see it the way we used to see it, from the outside looking in, because I know a lot of the plot points for the second story arc, but it'll be interesting to sort of see and hear people sort of with a different perspective, with sort of a different they won't have the same information that we might, and so it's kind of fascinating to me now, to sort of chat with Jason and be like, hey, they're getting too close to the truth. We gotta change it up or something.
And like they said, they're gonna focus a lot on customizers and what people are doing with their figures. There were some photos on the on that, was it that actual episode? No, it was on New to Mythics, but they were on, some folks were on New to Mythics also, just talking about AWOK and talking about this show. So it's really good. That's exactly what needs to happen. We need to share it with other folks who clearly have great taste in toys if they're talking about Mythic Legions, to let them know that there are other also equally great toys out there and that sometimes are compatible. So it's a good time. I'm really, really excited about it. So
yeah, for sure. Austin M says, hold on, how about both opinions on space zombies?
Yeah.
Completely unrelated, but I enjoyed the little video about it you posted. Because I'm pretty sure I'm all in. Also, hello.
What's up, Austin? Well, before that, let me do a shameless self-promotion from my show, which is the Brick Something News, which happens in a little bit. But next week, I actually get to sit down with the creators of Space Zombies from Mars. I don't know how I nailed
that's right.
that interview, but I managed to book those guys on that first weekend. It's going to be the day after they kick off their Kickstarter. So set your clocks, your calendars. March 1st is when that Kickstarter is going up. They can go on now, log in, find the, I don't know if you can drop that link.
Yes, I can put the link in the description for Space Zombies for Mars. I didn't because we didn't plan on talking about it.
But, we got to talk about your stuff. But
yeah,
no, not your stuff. These people that I'm talking with next week who are going to be doing this dope thing with Space Zombies from Mars. But you can go on the Kickstarter and click to be notified.
Yeah, exactly.
Being backer number 1 apparently is a coveted position. So I'm going to ask everybody here who's planning on doing that to try and be number 1, just so that Travis, Mr. Wonderful, is not number 1. So
sign up for that notification, and then you'll get the email, and then you just have to be like stuck to your email account, sort of waiting for it to go live. Because as I said when I was asked, we will not be revealing what time we're going to launch. We have the time planned, but it's kind of just more fun. We said March 1st, and we've been saying March 1st for such a long time that you roughly know when it's going to be. So it's just like, pay attention come March 1st. Austin says, already have it saved on Kickstarter. So excited for sure. Love the engineer lady. Absolutely. I mean, all of them. And Brian Carr says, can't wait for the Bushido line too. They are fire. They absolutely are. I can't wait for that either. I think we're just waiting, or Jason is just waiting on a couple details that have to get confirmed as far as like production and then sort of costing, and then we should be going live on Spiro Toys with the pre-orders for that. And it'll be pre-orders rather than a Kickstarter or anything like that. So the turnaround time should be a little bit quicker, as the process is sort of already begun. All right, that's pretty much all I got. I mean, it's an hour. It gives you guys a nice little break to get your snack and have a little restroom break before you jump over onto Brick's channel. I will actually be with Arlen over on the Savage Crucible channel tonight. We're doing that at 5 p.m. Pacific. So tune into Brick and then jump over there if you're interested, if you want to hear more about Space Zombies from Mars. So that should be fun. One toy company having a chat with another toy company.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they reached out to us, and it was kind of a last minute thing. And they were like, we want to do it before ZoloCon. And I was like, woo, okay, let's figure something out. We went through like 5 different dates before we could sort of figure out one that would work. So it should be fun. Yeah. That's today at 5 p.m. Pacific time.
This is perfect. Today's a great day for indie toys. So
yeah,
we talked AWOK, we teased a little Bushido. We're talking, you'll get some Space Zombies later, but before that, 345 on my channel. If you're curious about where things are with Brutal Realm, which is a successful Kickstarter last year, I'm going to sit down with James and Jason and look at some prototypes. So I'm super excited. Then yeah, let's see, 5 p.m. I don't know how fast we can go, but maybe we can get done fast enough so that I can head over to Savage Crucible's channel and check out Adam and the TNT Co, Arlen and Ira, maybe for this one. All 3.
Ira can't make it, so it's Arlen and I tonight. Yeah,
but do that, and then can I also shout out? Go to the Highly Articulated channel. He just released a video this past week that sort of with the 3 of them as the toy creators talking all about the line. Lots of really good info. Go check it out and get hyped for this line. So.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be a wild next 35 days, 36 days, however long the next, however far it is before April 1st. It's going to be bonkers. But all right, guys, it's been a pleasure as always. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, bye-bye.